A bright meteor crossed the sky directly over an erupting Philippine volcano on Monday night, and the camera that caught it belongs to the same agency that has been tracking that volcano for 140 straight days. The footage came in at approximately 10:33 p.m. local time on May 25th. The Ligñon Hill IP camera in Legazpi City, operated by PHIVOLCS, the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, captured a fireball descending behind Mayon's northern slopes. PHIVOLCS posted it immediately, with an initial caption describing it as a meteor striking the northern slopes of Mayon. Within hours, the footage had been viewed by millions, and inside that same camera frame, Mayon, on day 140 of its continuous effusive eruption. Lava effusion in progress. Collapse-fed pyroclastic density currents already running down the Mi-isi and Basud gullies earlier that evening. Minor Strombolian activity at the summit. Incandescent lava flows in the same frame as the fireball trail. But here is the detail that tells the real story. Within hours of the original post, PHIVOLCS reviewed its own data, the seismic record from around 10:33, infrasound signals, additional camera angles. The conclusion came overnight. The meteor disintegrated in the atmosphere. It did not strike the slopes. It did not reach the volcano at all. It did not cause anything. The footage was real. The interpretation that traveled with it was wrong. In Legazpi City, residents who had been watching the eruption from rooftops for months saw the fireball with their own eyes. The Mayon Volcano Observatory on Ligñon Hill has been their reference point since January. In Camalig and Guinobatan, evacuation centers are still operational from the May 2nd collapse, roughly 4,000 people still inside. They were not in danger from a meteor that never reached the ground. They are still in the danger zone for the volcano that is still effusing lava 3 weeks after the alert was raised. On day 1 of the meteor footage going viral, the assumption was that the volcano had been hit. On day 2, PHIVOLCS published the correction. On day 141 of the eruption itself, Mayon was still effusing lava down the same 3 gullies it had been using before the meteor crossed the sky. The meteor did not wake Mayon up. It crossed the sky over a volcano that was already wide awake. Here is why the world stopped to look. The image worked because every element in it was already cinematic. Mayon has one of the most symmetrical cones of any active stratovolcano on Earth, a near-perfect triangle silhouetted against the night sky. The summit was glowing red-orange from the active lava. The mid-flanks were dotted with the heat signature of incandescent rockfalls. And across the upper third of the frame, a bright meteor trail descended diagonally against the dark sky. A bright meteor crossing the line of sight of an active stratovolcano is rare on its own. Both happening at the same instant, captured by a monitoring camera pointed at the volcano 24 hours a day, is rarer. Within an hour of the PHIVOLCS post, the footage had been shared by news networks across multiple continents. The initial PHIVOLCS caption, describing the meteor as striking the northern slopes, gave the footage a story. A story is what makes a clip travel. The story was wrong. But by the time the correction was published, the original framing had already reached millions of feeds. That is how the moment went viral, not because the meteor caused anything. Because 2 unrelated events visually coincided in a single camera frame. Here is what PHIVOLCS actually found. The seismic record from around 10:33 p.m. showed no impact signature on Mayon. The infrasound data, atmospheric pressure signals that would register a meteor reaching low altitude, confirmed an atmospheric disintegration. Additional camera angles from monitoring stations around the volcano showed no surface disturbance on the slopes. PHIVOLCS published its clarification overnight. The agency's exact phrasing, disintegrated while still in the atmosphere and did not reach the slopes of Mayon. Disintegrated. What was not disintegrating that same night, what was instead very much alive on Mayon slopes, is what the same Ligñon Hill camera caught next. At 10:53 p.m., 20 minutes after the meteor passed overhead, the camera recorded lava effusion with collapse-fed pyroclastic density currents, uson in Tagalog, moving down the Bonga, Basud, and Mi-isi gullies. At 11:42 p.m., a second collapse-fed PDC was recorded. At 12:32 and on May 26th, a third. 3 collapse-fed flows in roughly 2 hours. Throughout the same evening, minor Strombolian activity continued at the summit crater, short explosive bursts ejecting glowing volcanic material. Incandescent lava flows remained visible in the camera frame. On May 26th, the effusive eruption reached its 141st consecutive day. None of this changed because a meteor crossed the sky. The volcano kept doing what it had been doing for 140 days. Here is why the volcano's own activity that night mattered more than the meteor. Collapse-fed pyroclastic density currents are not the kind of PDC most people picture. They are not driven by a sudden explosive blast from below. They are driven by gravity acting on lava that has already reached the surface. Mayon's lava is thick andesite. It cannot flow downhill quickly. When fresh lava reaches the summit crater, it piles up at the head of each gully. The lobe gets steeper. Eventually, the slope can no longer carry its own weight. The lobe collapses while it is still hot. At the moment of collapse, the lava is still partially molten, still rich in dissolved gas. The gas releases on contact with the air. The rock blows apart into ash and pumice. The mixture mobilizes as a ground-hugging cloud of hot debris running down the gully at speeds nobody on foot can outrun. The interior temperature can exceed 700 degrees Celsius, roughly 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit. Hot enough to incinerate vegetation on contact, hot enough to bury a road within minutes, hot enough to require a strict 6-kilometer permanent danger zone, regardless of whether the volcano is producing a dramatic explosion or quietly effusing lava. The 3 flows recorded between 10:53 p.m. and 12:32 am all followed that mechanism. Not explosive eruption from below, collapse from above. Bonga, Basud, Mi-isi. The same 3 paths Mayon has been using all year. Here is what the monitoring picture looks like beyond one night's footage. Alert Level 3 has been in force since May 2nd, 24 days by May 26th. The 6-kilometer permanent danger zone is strictly prohibited, with the southern sector treated as a 7 to 8 kilometer extended zone where pyroclastic flows are most likely to travel. Volcanic earthquakes remain elevated, 20 to 71 per day during the recent monitoring weeks. Sulfur dioxide emissions remain in the mid-1,000 tons per day range. Hundreds of rockfall events per day. None of these numbers changed because a meteor passed overhead. They were elevated before the meteor. They remain elevated after the correction. What PHIVOLCS is watching this week: continued seismic counts, SO2 trend, collapse-fed PDC frequency, plume direction, and the rainfall remobilization risk as the monsoon advances over Albay. The meteor was rare. The volcano is constant. Mayon remains at Alert Level 3. Day 141 of effusive eruption. 3 new collapse-fed pyroclastic flows in the 24 hours around the meteor footage. No new escalation, no de-escalation. The question now is not whether the meteor changed something on Mayon. It did not. The question is whether the eruption continues at its current rhythm, or whether one of the upcoming PDCs becomes large enough to change the alert. The question is whether the communities downwind, downslope, and downstream of Mayon are paying attention to the same monitoring data PHIVOLCS publishes every day. The meteor did not wake Mayon up. It crossed the sky over a volcano that was already wide awake. Day 141. 3 pyroclastic flows in 2 hours. 1 meteor that never touched the ground. The volcano was the story before the meteor. It is still the story after. If this story is worth telling, subscribe. We cover more of these every week.